September 1988, Wembley Stadium, London. 60,000 fans screaming at the top of their lungs as Michael Jackson performs Man in the Mirror with soul-crushing emotion. The Bad World Tour was reaching its climax, and this was supposed to be a celebration of unity and hope. But then, during the most vulnerable moment of the song, a desperate British man breaks through three security barriers and storms the stage, screaming accusations that cut Michael to his core. 40,000 people gasped in horror as the man got within arm's reach of the King of Pop. Security rushed to tackle him. The crowd started panicking, and Michael had every right to let his bodyguards handle it. But what he did instead left everyone completely speechless and proved why he truly was the greatest human being who ever lived. If you're ready to see how real legends handle their worst moments, smash that subscribe button and hit the bell right now, because this story will show you the difference between fame and true greatness. Let's dive into the night Michael Jackson turned chaos into a miracle. To understand what made Michael's response so extraordinary that night at Wembley, you need to know what was happening behind the scenes of the Bad World Tour in September 1988. Michael was physically and emotionally drained. He had been touring for over 18 months, performing in front of millions of people across the globe, and the pressure was beginning to crack his usually perfect facade. London had always been special to Michael. The British fans showed a level of passion and loyalty that touched him deeply, and he often said that performing at Wembley felt like coming home to family. The September shows were meant to be the emotional climax of the entire European leg. 7 sold-out nights that would be recorded for a potential live album. But September 14th started differently than any other show. That morning, Michael had received devastating news from his security team. There had been multiple threats made against his life by an obsessed individual who had been following the tour across Europe. Scotland Yard had been consulting with Michael's security team, and everyone was on high alert. Michael was visibly shaken, recalled his personal assistant, Karen Thompson. He kept asking if we should cancel the show, not because he was scared for himself, but because he was worried about putting the audience in danger. That's just who he was, always thinking about others first. Despite the threats, Michael decided the show must go on. These fans have traveled from all over Europe, he told his team. I won't let some sick person steal their joy and excitement. But the tension was suffocating backstage. Security had been quadrupled. Every entrance was being monitored by both Michael's team and Scotland Yard. And Michael's usual pre-show meditation routine was disrupted by constant safety briefings. His band members noticed he seemed distracted during soundcheck, missing vocal cues that he normally hit with supernatural precision. The show began without incident. Michael's opening performance of Wanna Be Startin' Something had the crowd on their feet, and for a moment it seemed like everything would go smoothly. Song after song, Michael delivered his usual perfection, but those who knew him well could see the strain in his movements, the forced smile during his usually effortless banter. Then came Man in the Mirror, the song that had become Michael's most personal and vulnerable moment in every show. This was always when he connected most deeply with his audience, often walking to the edge of the stage and singing directly to individual fans, his voice cracking with emotion as he delivered the message about changing yourself to change the world. As he began the gentle opening lines, I'm going to make a change for once in my life, Michael walked to the front of the stage as he always did. But something was terribly wrong. In the front section, just 20 feet from the stage, there was a commotion that was growing louder and more violent by the second. A tall, disheveled man in his late 20s had somehow bypassed multiple security checkpoints and was now climbing over the barrier that separated the audience from the stage. He was clearly intoxicated, stumbling as he moved, but his determination was absolutely terrifying. His face was red with rage, and he was screaming something that couldn't be heard over the music, but his body language was unmistakably hostile. "Michael, Michael," the man shouted, his Liverpool accent cutting through the air like a knife. "You think you're God. You think you're better than all of us." Security immediately converged on the man, but in the chaos of trying to not hurt innocent fans around him, he managed to break free and actually made it onto the stage. For a terrifying moment, he was standing just 10 feet away from Michael, screaming accusations and conspiracy theories that made no sense but were filled with pure hatred. "You've been lying to us. All of it is fake. You don't care about any of us. the man yelled, his face contorted with alcohol-fueled rage. "You're just another rich bastard pretending to care." The crowd's initial excitement turned to absolute horror. People were screaming, some were crying, and many started heading for the exits, fearing this was some kind of terrorist attack. The other band members stopped playing, unsure of what to do. This was every performer's worst nightmare, an unstable person on stage with unlimited access to cause harm. Michael stood frozen, not from fear, but from something deeper. This was exactly what he had been worried about that morning, but seeing it happen, seeing the pain behind this man's anger, something shifted inside him. As the drunk intruder stood on the Wembley Stadium stage, hurling accusations at Michael Jackson, time seemed to move in slow motion. Security guards were rushing from all directions. The band had stopped playing entirely, and 60,000 people held their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Michael's head of security, James Mitchell, was shouting orders through his radio. "Code red! Code red! Stage breach! Get him down now!" Within seconds, 8 security guards surrounded the intruder, ready to tackle him to the ground and end this nightmare. But then Michael did something that stopped everyone in their tracks. He raised his hand, signaling for security to halt. "Wait," he said into his microphone, his voice calm but shaking slightly. "Just wait a minute." The intruder, whose name was later revealed to be Danny Walsh, a 29-year-old unemployed dock worker from Liverpool who had been drinking heavily since losing his job 3 months earlier, continued his rant. "You think you can just dance around and make people worship you? You don't know what real life is like. You've never struggled a day in your life." Instead of backing away or letting security handle the situation, Michael took a step closer to Danny. The crowd gasped audibly. Even his own team was confused and terrified. This went against every security protocol they had established. "You're right," Michael said softly into his microphone, his words carrying throughout the massive stadium. "I don't know what your life is like." Danny stopped mid-sentence, clearly not expecting that response. His angry expression shifted to confusion as Michael continued speaking. "What's your name?" Michael asked, his voice gentle despite the chaos surrounding them. Danny stumbled slightly, the alcohol and adrenaline making it hard for him to process what was happening. "What? What does it matter?" "It matters to me," Michael replied. "You came all the way to London. You're at my show and you have something you need to say. I want to hear it." Security was getting anxious. James Mitchell was frantically speaking into his earpiece, trying to get Michael to step back. But Michael wasn't listening. He was completely focused on Danny, seeing something in his eyes that others couldn't see. Not just anger, but deep, crushing pain. "My name's Danny," the man finally said, his voice less aggressive now, more confused than angry. "Danny," Michael repeated, as if testing how the name felt. "Danny, you said I don't know what real life is like. You said I've never struggled. Tell me about your struggles." The question hung in the air. 60,000 people were watching this surreal conversation between a global superstar and a drunk stranger who had just invaded his stage. Danny looked around, suddenly seeming to realize where he was and what he had done. I lost my job," Danny mumbled, his voice barely audible but picked up by Michael's microphone. 3 months ago, 20 years I worked at the docks, and they just threw me away like I was nothing." Michael nodded slowly as if he understood completely. "Danny, can I tell you something? Every single day I wake up feeling like I might not be good enough. Every day I worry that I'm letting people down, that I'm not living up to what they expect from me." The arena was so quiet you could hear the sound equipment humming. Even the security guards had stopped moving, transfixed by what they were witnessing. Michael continued, "The difference between you and me isn't that I'm better or that I haven't struggled. It's just that I was lucky enough to find something I was good at, and people have been kind enough to support me, but that doesn't make your pain any less real." Danny's aggressive posture was completely gone now. He was staring at Michael with a mixture of disbelief and something that looked like shame. "I've been drinking," Danny said quietly. "I didn't mean to. I wasn't thinking clearly. My wife left me last month, took my daughter, said I was becoming someone she didn't recognize." Michael's eyes filled with tears. The subject of broken families always affected him deeply. "Danny, what's your daughter's name?" "Emma," Danny replied, his voice cracking. "She's only 6. She doesn't understand why Daddy can't live with them anymore." What happened next in Wembley Stadium was something that none of the 60,000 witnesses would ever forget. Michael Jackson, instead of having the intruder removed, invited him to sit down on the edge of the stage. Danny, still swaying slightly from the alcohol, looked around in bewilderment as if he couldn't believe this was real. "Danny," Michael said, sitting down beside him, "tell me about Emma. What does she like to do?" The massive video screens throughout the stadium showed this intimate conversation to the entire arena, and people began to realize they were witnessing something unprecedented. This wasn't just a security incident being handled with unusual grace. It was becoming a moment of genuine human connection and healing. Danny looked down at his hands, his earlier aggression completely replaced by vulnerability. "She loves to draw," he said, his voice barely audible, but carried by Michael's microphone. "She draws pictures of our family, but now she draws me standing far away from her and her mum." The crowd was completely silent, hanging on every word. Many people were crying, not from fear anymore, but from the raw emotion of watching two human beings connect in the most unlikely circumstances. Michael listened intently, never once looking uncomfortable or impatient. "Danny, do you know what Man in the Mirror is about? The song I was singing when you came up here?" Danny shook his head, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "It's about looking at yourself honestly and deciding to change. It's about realizing that the person you have the most power to change is yourself. And sometimes that's the hardest thing in the world to do." Michael stood up and offered his hand to Danny. "Would you like to hear the rest of it?" Not as a performance, but as one person sharing something real with another. Danny took his hand and stood up, still looking dazed. Michael gestured to his band, who had been standing frozen throughout this entire exchange. "Guys, let's take it from the second verse." As the gentle melody of Man in the Mirror began again, Michael started singing, but this time he wasn't performing for the crowd. He was singing to Danny, making eye contact, sharing the lyrics as if they were having a private conversation. "If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and then make a change." Danny began to cry, not the angry, frustrated tears of someone who had lost control, but the cathartic tears of someone who felt understood for the first time in months. The crowd watched in amazement as Michael put his arm around Danny's shoulders and continued singing. When he reached the chorus, something magical happened. Danny began to mouth the words along with him. He knew the song. He had been a fan all along. As the song ended, Michael turned to address the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, Danny here reminded me tonight why I do what I do. Music isn't about being perfect or being better than anyone else. It's about recognizing that we're all human. We're all struggling with something. And sometimes a song, a moment, a connection with another person can make all the difference." The applause that followed was unlike anything Wembley Stadium had ever heard. It wasn't the usual screaming and cheering. It was respectful, emotional applause, the kind you hear when people are witnessing something sacred. As the concert ended that night, Michael made an unprecedented decision. Instead of rushing off to his dressing room as usual, he spent over an hour talking with Danny backstage. Security footage later showed them sitting together, sharing a meal, and having what appeared to be a deep, meaningful conversation. "I've never seen anything like it," said James Mitchell, Michael's head of security. This man had just committed what could have been considered assault, disrupted a major concert, and caused a massive security breach. But Michael treated him like an old friend who needed help. During their conversation, Danny revealed the full extent of his personal crisis. His drinking had cost him his dock job. His marriage had ended bitterly, and he was facing the possibility of losing all visitation rights with his daughter Emma. The trip to London was supposed to be his last hurrah before, as he put it, giving up completely. Michael listened without judgment and then made an offer that stunned everyone, including his own management team. "Danny, I want to help you get your life back," he said, "but you have to want it too." Within 48 hours, Michael had arranged for Danny to enter a premier rehabilitation facility in California. All expenses paid. But the help didn't stop there. Michael also connected Danny with a family counselor who specialized in reuniting fathers with their children and arranged for job placement assistance once Danny completed his treatment. Michael saved my life that night, Danny later said in a 1991 interview with the Sun newspaper. Not just by not having me arrested, but by seeing something in me that I couldn't see in myself. The story of what happened at Wembley spread quickly, but not in the sensationalized way that celebrity incidents usually do. Instead, it became a powerful example of how compassion can triumph over conflict. Mental health advocates praised Michael's handling of the situation, and several organizations invited him to speak about crisis intervention. Danny successfully completed his rehabilitation program and began rebuilding his relationship with his daughter. The job placement assistance led to a position with a construction company in London where he eventually became a foreman. Most importantly, he maintained sobriety and gradually regained the trust of his ex-wife, who allowed him increased time with Emma. But perhaps the most touching part of this story is what developed between Danny and Michael over the years. They maintained regular contact, with Michael checking in on Danny's progress and even attending Emma's 8th birthday party in 1990. Uncle Michael, as Emma came to know him, became an honorary family member who provided guidance and support during difficult times. When Danny struggled with moments of doubt during his recovery, it was Michael who talked him through it, using his own experiences with pressure and isolation to help the man find his way. The Wembley incident also changed how Michael approached his concerts. He became more aware of individual audience members who seemed distressed or upset, often pausing his shows to check on fans who appeared to be in crisis. His security team was retrained to look for signs of people in emotional distress, not just physical threats. That night taught Michael that sometimes the people who seem the most dangerous are actually the people who need help the most, reflected Karen Thompson. It changed his entire perspective on fan interaction and human connection. The final chapter of this story came in 2009, just months before Michael's death, when Danny Walsh, now 15 years sober and remarried, brought his entire family, including Emma, now 21 and a university graduate, to Michael's final rehearsal for the This Is It tour. It was a private moment of gratitude between two men whose unlikely meeting had transformed both their lives. This incredible story shows us that our darkest moments can become our greatest opportunities for connection and healing. Michael Jackson could have had Danny arrested that night, but instead he chose to see a human being in crisis and responded with the one thing that changes everything: compassion. What would the world look like if we all responded to anger and pain the way Michael did that night? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to remember that everyone deserves a second chance. Don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell, because we have more incredible untold stories that prove the power of choosing love over fear, understanding over judgment, and hope over despair. Until next time, remember, sometimes the people who seem the angriest are actually the people who need love the most.